Welcome to this special edition podcast series, Surviving the Shitstorm with me, Michael Tinkser. In this episode, I'll be talking with Julian Mathews, solicitor and partner at Wedlake Bell in London, who has years of experience in advising hospitality and restaurant businesses. We talked about the current storm, what operators need to do right now to prepare themselves legally, short and long term, what they should do in the coming times to be ready when they come out of hibernation, and we also discussed how all this is going to impact company culture and employee engagement. Thanks to our partners HGEM, Tahola and Vita Mojo, who's making this possible. Grab pen and notebook, there's some great nuggets and insights in this. Thank you for joining another special edition podcast, Surviving the Shitstorm. We have the 20th of March 2020, and the world is really unraveling very quickly, and our beloved hospitality and restaurant industry had hit this storm due to the coronavirus, and leaders are dealing with extreme uncertainty out there, but also their people are probably in a lot of stress and fear due to the mass redundancy that's going on right now. And I'm very lucky today to have Julian on the podcast, who is a partner at Wedlake Bell, who actually he works with a lot of hospitality and restaurant companies when it comes to the legal side, but also growing their businesses. And he will have some very interesting angles, I know, from the conversation I had with her about this whole situation. And so welcome to the podcast, Julian.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be on.
For people that don't know who Julian is and also Wedlake Bell, can you just give the short pitch, elevator pitch about what you're all about and what it is that you are doing on a day-to-day basis in the hospitality and restaurant sector?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. So I think, as you said, I'm a partner at the London-based law firm Wedlake Bell. We're a full-service law firm servicing all forms of clients, very strong in real estate and corporate and other such advisory. Myself, I'm a corporate partner, so I've been in private practice for over 25 years, and that predominantly is around mergers and acquisitions and private equity. Probably for the last 15 or so years, I've been quite sector focused on hospitality and leisure, and the substantial part of my practice is in that area and arena now. So I'm advising restaurants and hotels, bars, etc., as well as other leisure outlets. Personally, I'm very much about helping them grow, as I say, through equity and bank growth. But my colleagues also help very closely, so employment lawyers, banking lawyers, and real estate lawyers, giving a full sector approach to clients in that sector.
I guess it's very different times now, and what you and the company is gonna be helping out with as we see the things unravel. How do you see the whole thing from your table as a lawyer, as a solicitor, and a law firm on a short term and a long term basis right now for the industry?
Well, many things have been said. Words such as unprecedented, apocalyptic, decimation of the high street, etc. And the hyperbole goes on, but it quite frankly isn't hyperbole, because it is that bad. I mentioned I'm a corporate lawyer, but I can see myself in the short term retraining as an insolvency lawyer, because that is absolutely one of the big dangers which many clients are facing. And this is not just those which were struggling to get by in the last couple of years. This goes for the whole set of restaurant businesses, good and small and large. So it is a very bad situation. Let nobody be in doubt about that. I mean, the industry has been suffering for the last couple of years, which has been well documented through many costs and headwinds which have been blowing through. But in reality, this tsunami makes what has gone before look like a bit of a walk in the park, unfortunately. So you look at last week, advising many clients about things they needed to be thinking about. The most obvious things were talk to your landlord, talk to HMRC around trying to defer VAT, business rates, etc. That debate has moved swiftly on. Those conversations have been had, but in the here and now, what we are looking at is the very stark analysis for clients, as I say, big and small, as how much cash have you got? Are you going to survive? And that comes into focus both in terms of insolvency law and in terms in the immediate viewpoint in terms of employment law too, because the reality is, unfortunately, these businesses, the main elements of cost saving is employment based, and that's a very difficult debate to be having at this point, because let's face it, hospitality businesses, they're all about the culture of their staff. What is a restaurant without that strong team behind it? And that's the real difficulty, and that's one thing which I fear for, because as we know, so many good businesses have great staff culture, and if these businesses are not protected and not saved, as it were, predominantly coming through from required government help, then that culture will be unfortunately lost, is my fear. So that's the immediate issue we're facing and advising companies on. I guess ultimately there will be winners, there'll be losers, and many will fall. And, Michael, we were talking about the announcement just before we started this about Vapiano having announced that they're falling into insolvency. There will be more, unfortunately. So this is the real time where you look at that. I mentioned culture. We're also seeing great things happen in the industry, and great efforts being taken outside of what people do. So, you start from the wonderful Brewdog creating Brewdog hand sanitizer. You hear of great funds being raised to help staff who are being made redundant, and we'll come on to that in a minute. But unfortunately, a lot have been already, has been documented in the press the last couple of days. And the things which I really admire is this great culture in the industry coming to the fore to be innovative. And one saying comes immediately to mind from the great film Gladiator: that which we do in life echoes in eternity. Well, we are in that real strong position here of what businesses do really will have a fundamental impact in real term on what happens in the next 24, 48 hours, etc. So, for example, one of my clients is Honest Burgers, and I'm so proud of the fact they have not made redundancies, that they're doing everything they can to keep their people and keep that great culture alive. And they're working with other organizations to come up with solutions, helping out, possibly repositioning staff in short term to help out Amazon or places or supermarkets. It's just wonderful. But the fundamental thing is they have said we will stick by them for, I think it was mentioned in one of the announcements on the hospitality websites today, to at least until the 23rd of April, they're guaranteeing 50% of basic earnings. Directors are cutting their salaries, etc. So it's great behaviours. Even last night on Question Time, Angela Hartnett saying what wonderful things are happening. So it's a terrible time, but there's great behaviours coming out of it.
I agree, and you see there's a lot of giving going on, and a lot of people going. I can definitely see a shift from business to caring. I would say, like it's much less about making business, about caring and keeping things alive and make sure people has a livelihood. And all great example you mentioned, and there's so much going on out there that you can see actually an industry that comes together now in these hard times.
It does, and these behaviours are just something which really do need to be noted from the very top. I think we were just talking earlier, Michael, about a great paper I saw by the Professor Christopher Muller. Just noticed that on LinkedIn this morning, and this ties into your more longer term situation, which will happen in the industry coming out of this. Let's face it, the face of dining out will be changing in a great way. You think about some of the brands which you expect on the high street, some of them will not be there. We've just mentioned Vapiano. I think that's the first domino to fall of quite a few further if we're not careful. And today's or Tuesday's announcement by the government of their funding package, well, it starts the process. It's a great, good step, but more is needed. We need more in terms of employee support, which hopefully will be coming tonight in the next Prime Minister's briefing. But just going back to Christopher Muller's point, he wrote this very interesting article about other pandemics, going back to the Spanish flu pandemic in the turn of the century. But it's an interesting thought that at the end of the day, the demand will still be there when this blows over, as and when it does blow over. Obviously, who knows what the timing will be. But I'll quote from the paper. It says, "The current crisis, similar to the last great pandemic, may be seen as the catalyst for the growth of a new middle class. This emerging model will come with a newfound respect for the large hospitality industry that drives it. Restaurants and hotels are the true industrial backbone, the solid infrastructure, and the real drivers of the new economy. This may actually be the time when we all finally notice and acknowledge how important the work and the workers in hospitality are to all of us." And that's a great thought, because UK hospitality has for a long time been trying to bang the drum at how important this is as an industry. I mean, it's undoubtedly a very important industry. It's very large. It's the third largest giver to the economy. But in that narrative around immigration, etc., and how businesses were going to be starved of a labour supply, which was already short even before we kicked off on Brexit. These messages need to be heard by government. Why do you think this current government got in? Is because it listened to the voices of the people, or that's the narrative anyway, and that's really important. Now is the time for the hospitality industry to be listened to, because so many are in it and so many are giving to as a result for it. So that's my views on how that will play out.
That was a very interesting quotation you did there, and we will put that in the show note. And you said you already to me that you will share this article with me, so we will make sure that so people can have a read of that when they have the time. But that's an interesting view on it if you take the long-term positivity on the situation on it as well. And I also noticed yesterday I was reading an article about hospitality in China, in Hong Kong and Shanghai. It's coming back to life slowly after 2.5-3 months. I know our situation can be different, and nobody can predict this, but it seems like about 70 to 80% of business there is back into action from a hospitality point of view, still with restrictions in restaurant, with how close can you sit and how many people at the table. But there's definitely light there in a way, and that's real life facts, and not just prognosis or our gut feel or anything. This is actually happening over there. So
I mean, it's an interesting one, Michael, because we're not qualified to talk about the scientific evidence, as my beloved football team's leader Jurgen Klopp pointed out, and it quite rightly. But we can observe the most obvious thing about this is that, let's face it, the behaviour in the market now is driven on a real-time view of trying to obviously avoid the spread, but also confidence comes into it. And if you're looking at it in the pure analysis like that, confidence will really only come back fully when there is some form of vaccine for this. So, we can control it, but until you really get a vaccine, how nervous are we going to be that it will come back, etc. And that's the great unknown, I think. Obviously,
very good point. Yeah,
I'm afraid I'm not qualified to give the answer, though.
No. And I think actually the words out, my wife referred to me that there was an article or some scientists have been out saying that social distance would maybe be a thing that will, still be relevant in 12 months' time. Even though we are back into action, we'll still have to be aware of how we interact. And so it's going to be weird, already now when you go into the supermarket, you can see people don't want to get too close to you. So it's like, it's already happening. Yeah,
it is, and it will be extraordinary to see how it changes behaviours. I mean, the notion of no longer shaking hands but doing the chef's elbow, shall we say? I mean, I had a catch-up meeting with Jeremy King last week, and obviously Jeremy's immaculately dressed, etc. And the notion of doing an elbow greeting to him like that was very amusing. But I think the point is quite frankly, the notion of cleanliness and hygiene, etc., how that will affect people's behaviour is quite interesting as a question. But we're probably we're going off on a tangent, I suspect.
So take us a bit on. From a government point of view, is there any other things you would think that has to be looked at from the government point of view? Is there anything else they could do? Anything you would encourage them to do in this storm, and how they can support hospitality from the experience you have working in the industry, and that really would have a massive effect on what you hear from your clients as well. They're looking for.
I mean, it's an interesting one because I probably take being a lawyer, probably take a more balanced and holistic view of all sides before I give a view on that. I mean, my starting point is UK hospitality are doing great things. They've been lobbying well. I mean, Kate Nichols has been quite splendid the way she's been pushing this. You do need more radical voices because inevitably the government will do what they do. I think Tuesday's announcement was seen as a good start, but you're already seeing suggestions it's not enough. But we've got to work with it. We've got experts in their field trying to come up with this, and unfortunately things do take time, but time is not what is on the industry's hands at the moment. Every delay in terms of what is done vis-a-vis employees is going to mean more redundancies by a lot of businesses, and it's also, we can't be judgmental on them because, like I say, at this here and now, the value advice is to boards is all about balancing their solvency status, and each individual company will have a different position than others. Some will be well funded, some will have good strong cash resources, others will, as we know, will be pretty much on the edge before we even got into this. So difficult decisions have to be made, and I just hope people aren't too judgmental on those who've had to make those hard decisions, assuming they're made all sincerely, etc. But the government has to come through tonight is the message. It's got to be something which is going to back up those words of very strong general comments by the Prime Minister around we will not let businesses or employees suffer as a result of the coronavirus. Well, they're sweeping comments, but as I advise companies on the technical here and now insolvency implications, i.e. can you pay your debts as and when they fall due, the notion of trying to bring a sweeping comment without any actuality behind it as an excuse not to take difficult decisions is a step too far at this point. So I think I'm definitely hoping that the Chancellor will really think about what is needed. I know they've been working hard on it, as has been alluded to in the statements. They've been working hard with trade unions, so that suggests something quite radical will be coming. But this is all about life supply to companies as well as their employees. So we do need that sweeping support to be coming through tonight.
Yeah, and I guess it's also about these people that sometimes, they're living on a minimum wage already, and they don't have deep stacked pockets of cash to survive on. So they almost gonna very quickly be in a situation to pay rent and get food on the table. It's gonna be a massive challenge within short time if there's not some kind of support there for them. But as well, if you just look at a totally individual level on it.
I agree, and there, as ever, there is many people in privileged positions. There's many that are not. In a time of just utter swift devastation of many, and bear in mind, it's not just hospitality this affects; it affects many other industries too. So the government has many pressures on it, obviously, which it needs to balance. But they've got the experts there; they are being well advised. So we do need to have faith that that will come through. But for those people you mentioned, yes, I mean it is very difficult times. And again, I come back to the nature of this industry, which the first thing were businesses are totally affected, but the leaders are still setting up funds, hardship funds, etc. Which it's the great positive side of this industry which needs to be acknowledged, basically. And hopefully those types of distress funds will be there for those that need it. I mean, you hear in the States, obviously, Danny Meyer setting up his own fund for his own employees, etc. So those kind of behaviours which this industry is famous for, and quite rightly, and it needs that acknowledgement. So hopefully that will be good enough to protect people.
Yeah, and I think we should give a shout out to Danny Meyer again that sets the standard, as I normally say it, and go for first with some massive initiative to help his employee and create like a fund for them. And you can see he is what he preached in his book, Set the Table. Is about people first, my people first, and the customer, and the rest will follow. I think it says something like that in the book. I read it a couple of times. What is your top tips for operators to do right now, short term and long term? And I know we can't put everybody in one box because everybody has individual situations. As you said, some have more cash, some have less. But what would you say is worth starting thinking about, like short term now? We saw the first insolvency today with the Barbiano, announcing that. And then I guess it's a bit that unfortunately that angle we have to take on this question in a way, saying that what is it that they need to do short term to either avoid or managing that situation.
It's a very interesting time, and as we said, this changes by the hour, so trying to be relevant is difficult. Each company will have its own struggles, its own issues which are affecting it on a daily basis, which we can't really generalize about. But the immediate advice, if you are, let's just say, a CEO of a hospitality business and we're talking, it's all about, you got to be calm, hold your nerve, focus on what really matters in the here and now in your business, and be very precise in what issues it faces. Be all over the cash flow position, be all over where the expenses are which are coming through, bearing in mind in reality is you've got little or no revenue coming through. So they're the things which need to be focused in on. And the bigger clients I have, which are well financed, they've got good management infrastructure, FDs, and often PE investors who can give that great know-how. For the smaller businesses which are starting off or maybe entrepreneurial, unfortunately that they don't have that. So it's beholden on professional advisors as much as we can to be very sensible on how we advise them and help them to get through this, because there'll be many good businesses of tomorrow without, if this hadn't have happened, which need help, and they would have been the rising stars for future. Just because they haven't actually got that good funding, we need to help them get there, shall we say. But the main point is that each business needs to focus on what its individual costs are. I guess on a long-term basis, though, not being precise, you're looking at potentially a reshape of the business model to the industry and how risk is evaluated. I guess pandemics have always been something on people's lips, should we say? I mean, internally in my law firm, speaking to one of my IT people, she had always had a pandemic section in risk management, and people used to laugh at her, shall we say. She told me, but unfortunately she's been proven right, and her input's it's very valuable. You look at a lot of hospitality businesses, a week, 10 days ago, when this was really beginning to come out, they would have all been digging out their insurance policies, and unfortunately a lot are not covered with pandemic insurance extension to their policies. So that will become something which I would imagine becomes de rigueur from now on, assuming you'll be able to get it in the future. But this will drive different behaviours, that's one thing for sure. And I guess we just need to concentrate on the short term, though, and help people get through this crisis.
What are you thinking when it comes to, where should people go for help and support in all this? If you take the legal hat on, what kind of help and support do they go to their own solicitors? What is the questions they need to ask? I probably want to phrase it like that. What questions do you need to ask right now to get the right help you need? Because I guess what you bring with your balanced approach and being a third party and not a person involved in the situation very closely, you can ask the right questions, so you can give the right support if you get the right information.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I think you had Jonathan Downey on as your first guest in this crisis section, should we say, of your podcasts. And I think he mentioned he was a lawyer himself in the past, and he was cognizant, obviously, law firms and accountancy firms, etc., who will be advising around this, or to some people quite expensive. I mean, the advice, obviously, to all from small to large is use your network. So smaller people, the great thing about the hospitality industry is it's very, very well interconnected. Everybody seems to know each other. So there will be no end of support for people who do not have access to it. The bigger companies, obviously my clients, clearly have been inputting to them and their views, but often they will have a strong management team around them where they do know various things. I guess the point is, for those that really need the help and need it as in they really are struggling and don't know where to turn, first of all, I'm happy to speak to anyone quickly and take them through issues that are in their business. Second point, there's a lot of online content out there. I would direct first and foremost to some of the content UK Hospitality is pushing out, which is an amalgamation of different professional advisors around the issues. In the here and now, as we stand, just going back to the earlier point in the podcast, I highlighted actually some of the main things now which need thinking of are insolvency law and the implications of trading when insolvent. So that analysis is very important. So that's a legal analysis, it's an accounting analysis. So you need that type of understanding. And as I say, the employment analysis is absolutely critical at the here and now, as people are trying to take a view, do we unfortunately let people go? It hopefully is going to be the last resort. I mean, the Prime Minister was imploring people to stick by your employees, and quite rightly so, if it's possible. But it's a fine line balancing that between where the insolvency legislation kicks in, shall we say. So they're the two biggies which companies will need help on, analysing A, are they solvent, and B, what can they do with their employees.
In all this, I guess you is also trying to keep yourself sane, because you're probably going to you have already, I know, and will be in the next coming time, be approached from people all the time that needs your help and support. What is your three things you do as an individual to keep yourself, sharp, because there's people that want some of your brain power, which is it can be quite exhausting. I know that myself as well. I've been helping out a lot of people. But what do you do to protect yourself in a way and be ready?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously, in a situation where it's the here and now, you just got to be available. Certainly, when clients are asking for help, when they really need it, like now, you've just got to be available. That's the point. And you've also got to bear in mind there's a human element to all of this. As people battle for survival, as you highlight, the bigger picture, quite frankly, around this is there are people, unfortunately, dying as a result of that. So a degree of perspective has to be borne in mind that this is not just a business issue. It's actually, without sounding too dramatic, a life and death situation. So we've got to be respectful of that too. But when the proverbial is hitting the fan, you've just got to be there for your client, no matter when, what time, etc., and just help them out.
Great. Where are you as a company sending any advice out, anything that people could look at, share? Is there any social channels, websites, anything that could help them as it is right now? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess on a personal element, if people do need it, feel free to contact me. I'll send you my details. I think you've got them anyway on the bottom of emails. My email address is Julian it's J Mathews, at wedlakebell.com, 1T in Mathews. Mobile number is 7968 558 739. In terms of content through my firm, just go to www.wedlakebell.com, and it's very easy to pick up on the links into coronavirus being put on there. Just very much available as and when needed.
Great, Julian. Is there anything you want to add here in the end that you think that's very important we get out there that people could have big use of, or something they need to be aware of in the situation we're in now?
As we all, particularly in London, begin to decamp into our houses, as it were, we just got to be aware we're all coming into unfamiliar territory. Some of us are, in terms of working at home and that lack of social engagement. So we've just got to be kind to ourselves is probably the message which has been pushed on your previous podcasts, and trust in the people who are the experts in this field to ensure that we get through it.
Thank you very much, Julian, for coming on the podcast. And I'm sending you and your family and your colleagues all the power and love and energy you need to get through the coming period, as you just mentioned. That could be quite difficult.
Indeed, Michael, and thank you, and same goes to your good self.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Julian, for your great advice and insight. I'm so sure people will already be implementing and also thinking about how they can implement some of this great thinking over the next period. Remember, if you would like some help, please reach out to Julian either via email, jmatthews@wedlakebell, or phone 07-968 558739. Please share this podcast so other industry people also can get help and insights from this. If you'd like more of this, please subscribe to one of our channels. More to come very soon. If you are not signed up to our newsletter, go to experience101.live and sign up today. Thanks to our partner HGEM, Tahola and Vita Mojo for supporting us to get this out to more movers, shakers and mavericks. Together we can overcome this. Thanks for listening and be kind out there.
We need more help, call the whole town. Now let's try and get this thing off the ground. All in together, let's gather round. We're gonna try and get this thing off the ground.